Hi there guys, I'm Cosmo, and I'm a Minecraft YouTuber, but I'm also a survivor main on DBD, and here are my extremely biased rankings for how fun all the killers are to play against as of patch 7.4.0. Quick heads up, the script was written during the 7.3.3 patch, so some things may seem a little different, and most of this video was filmed during that patch, so don't worry about it. I actually wasn't going to put Chucky in this video, but just for you guys, because he released today and I got a chance to play, Chucky's going to be in it today. This will have, no consideration for balance because I don't really care. We're going to start in the bottom tier, which I've called DC, or disconnect, because that's what I want to do the moment I lay eyes on these motherfuckers. In the very bottom of the bottom tier, we have Trickster. I feel this is self-explanatory, but he just feels as if someone was throwing those little pop snap things your uncle gives you on the 4th of July, but like a lethal version of it. He's super weak in high loops and indoor maps, but God forbid he catches you with your weenie out on a map like Coldwind or Mount Ormond. Bottom of the bottom for me. I hate him. I genuinely can't recall a single match I've ever had fun in with Trickster as the killer. And the buff that he seems to be getting in the next patch just makes him seem super broken. His design is okay and he has some fun cosmetics, but he's still the absolute bottom. Next up is the Knight. This isn't really because of the killer himself. Well, it kind of is, but it's more so because of how he's played and what his kit lets him do. He can camp with his little guys, which can be super annoying and difficult to counter, especially in a solo queue situation. But he gets more points because one time a Knight put a guy on me while I was downed and it was like homie was dancing on me, and I have to admit it was pretty funny. He's mostly here because the Knight feels very damned if you do, damned if you don't, and really limits the decisions a survivor can make. I like the Knight's design, but the hair coming out of the helmet brings it down a bit for me. I don't know if that has story significance because I'm pretty behind on my DBD lore, but it just looks bad to me. Next up is the Plague. She isn't very fun to play against, and she's even worse if you get a random player in your lobby that isn't on board with either cleansing or not cleansing or whatever your team decides to do. I hate how long the sickness lasts, especially when she accidentally hits a generator, and it's really annoying. On top of that, it's made worse when a random rescues you while they're sick and gets their nastiness all over you. I mean, at least they rescued though, so can't be all mad. She's also just really gross and really not fun for a few friends of mine who have that phobia of vomit. I have a few friends that play DBD with me a lot and they have a phobia of vomit, and it's really not fun to deal with Plague. Her design is really cool, so she does get some points for that. And finishing out the bottom rank, we have the Legion. He and Plague would have been the absolute bottom of this list back when Thanatophobia was buffed, but since it's a pretty bad perk again, they're not really that much worse. He's not very fun to play against in my opinion, but I've definitely had some fun moments with the Legion, as opposed to the other killers where that either happened once or didn't happen at all. His power is annoying, but it can also be engaging if you know how to run him, and timing pallets to stun him out of it is fun. I do hate the constant mending for sure, and healing all the time in a trial or having to stay injured the entire trial is not fun, especially when Thanatophobia is in the mix. But I mean, nowadays it's not that big of a deal. Visually, the Legion is pretty boring in their base outfit, but they do have some cool cosmetics, so I'll give them credit for that. Our next tier is the not fun tier. These are killers that I haven't played against much, or are just a snooze fest to play against, or are just, not very fun. The first killer to grace this tier is Skull Merchant. Full disclosure, I've played against Skull Merchant probably like 3 times because I took a break from DBD right after the Knight released and came back after the Singularity came out right before Xenomorph, so I basically skipped this killer's heyday. But from what I've heard and seen, she's not very fun to play against. The drones were hard to understand, and I still don't really get them, and she just feels like an M1 killer for the majority of the match. Pretty boring, but her design is kind of okay. It just doesn't scream Skull Merchant, Like, I would have pictured someone called the Skull Merchant like how the Singularity looks, or something along those lines. The best way I can describe Skull Merchant is that she looks like some dude's spicy fantasy more than an actual character or the weeb and nerd and weird character that she's supposed to be. Next is Clown. I have never enjoyed playing against Clown because his power counters chase so much that it makes the game feel like it's just throw pallet, walk side to side, Clown throw bottle, try to vault but too slow and die. Or it's like you try to use your exhaustion perk and he's just like, ha ha, no, f you. When I was newer to the game, Clown was particularly hard and frustrating because of the slowdown in chase, but I suppose that can be flipped on its head and be a good thing now from a more experienced survivor's perspective. Visually, the Clown is obviously disgusting, but that's the whole point, so it works in this case. I can remember particular frustration with the Clown, especially when I was new, because my builds would be very focused on escaping the killer, so a lot of the time I would run something like, what's that one perk called? What's that one perk that when you get hit you run further? Overcome, that's it. Perks like Overcome and Lucky Break and other things were things I like to use, and this killer really counters that, and I found that to be very unfun. However, it did make me learn how to chase with him, so it just depends on personal preference. Tag is down here because of the experience I've had playing against tags. You guys suck, and I hate you personally. personally, and 9 times out of 10 she's just trapping around hooks and standing there instead of actually playing the game or making the web of traps around parts of the map that are so much more interactive. I've had some fun matches with Hag, but a lot of the time I don't see her played at all, or she hooks someone and camps them the entire game. I hope that's changed with the recent patch that made camping a bit harder, but I haven't played against Hag in a long while that I can think of while writing this, so I don't know. Visually, I think she looks super cool, and I love some of the cosmetics she has, especially the like swamp monster one. I think that's my favorite one of hers. The Nightmare is next in this tier, and it's mostly because he just doesn't feel very interactive to me. He just feels like an M1 killer that can sometimes fake pallets, but I don't play against him a lot, so I don't know. Freddy does that trick where he like fake teleports to get you off the gen, and that only really works on newer players nowadays, which I'm grateful for since my teammates were already annoying enough before they stopped doing the gen with me. I find matches with Freddy can really go anywhere, but a lot of the time they're extremely boring, so he fits in this tier. And then he's also a licensed character, so judging his design the way I want to isn't really super fair. The best way I can describe Freddy is like that guy that dresses all emo and is actually like way too old to be hanging around high schoolers, but hangs around high schoolers anyway, which I suppose fits Freddy's character, but it's still a little weird. Next we have Onryo, which is kind of a weird one. So Sadako is harder for me to place because I've had good and bad experiences that go on the extreme ends of things. When I was obsessed with this game, it was the gen kick meta when Eruption got buffed and Call of Brine was insane. I can think of so many matches where it was an Onryo using the exact same gen kick build, and it was to the point where my friends and I were working to get blast mine and other perks to counter it. After that meta, I haven't really seen much of Sadako, so she can stay here. Visually, she looks exactly how she's supposed to, and that's creepy as hell, so I like her design. I like her one cosmetic too, but it is really expensive and kind of only worth it if you're a big fan of the Ring series. The last member of this tier is the Shape. Myers is like really up in the air with how the match can go, but he gets put in this tier because of the little story I'm about to share. So one of my first ever matches as someone brand new to DBD was Myers, and not just any normal standard stalking Myers from a distance, but an infinite tier 3 tombstone Myers. Keep in mind this was probably one of my first 3 matches of Dead by Daylight like ever. I was on Coldwind and in chase with Myers, and I booked it into the house. He caught me just outside the doorway and I immediately died. I was traumatized and super pissed off, and my friends still laugh about my reaction to it to this day. So f you Myers, you can stay here. And that brings us to the end of the not fun tier, and now we're in the tier. These killers are alright, not particularly fun, but not particularly bad either. First is the Cenobite. Pinhead can be quite fun and interactive, but he is a goddamn nightmare in solo queue, and I feel like that drags him down quite a bit. If no one goes for the box the entire game, then I get chain hunted, but if I go for the box the entire game, nobody does the generators, so I don't know, it's like bad both ways. Dodging his chain can be fun, and he's fun in chase, but it's definitely the chain hunt aspect that brings it all the way down for me. His design is cool, and I think the Chatterer looks awesome, but again, it's pretty expensive. I get it because they're licensed or whatever, but it still feels like a bit of a ripoff, but I've also never seen the Hellraiser movies, and I'm not that big of a fan, so I guess it just doesn't feel worth it to me. It might feel worth it to somebody that's like more into it though. Next is the Dredge, and it's mostly because of his Nightfall ability. I have fun playing against Dredge sometimes, but other times he's just a snooze fest of a match. It's definitely fun to do this little trick against him that I'm gonna call Boogeyman in the Locker, because I don't know what else to call it other than Deception, which is boring. So basically, I lock one side of a locker pair, and then Deception the other locker, and then the Dredge teleports thinking someone is in the locker, but because of that weird mechanic where he always teleports into the locked one no matter what, he just gets stuck in a locked locker. It's pretty funny. Although this did happen one time when I tried this, and here's the photo of it. This was a weird bug with it when Dredge came out. It really shocked me the first time I got it. But outside of that, I just find him pretty boring. His design is really awesome though. I do like a lot of his cosmetics, and all of his designs are like completely on point. Next is the Pig because of how annoying the RNG is on the hats. Another thing with Pig is how map dependent she truly is, because she dominates on somewhere like Midwich but does poorly on open and large maps. There isn't really much with Pig that's super interactive, and it absolutely sucks to be the survivor that searched Jigsaw box after Jigsaw box only to get harassed off of your last one by her. I don't have much else to say about her, but I would definitely say dodging her power is fun when she actually does use it, but Pig players never use their power in chase, so it can make it really boring. Her design is cool and creepy too, which I really like, and the Pig mask does look pretty awesome. The Artist was also one that was kind of harder to place because I find her fun in chase sometimes, but other times with the more skilled Artist player, she can feel very damned if you do, damned if you don't, like like with the knight, and that definitely sucks. It's also what makes the knight really suck because of his whole power being cornering you. At least with Artist, it's not really just about cornering you, and there's still some fun to it, but it still boils down to that at the end of the day. Then it's also annoying as hell when she hits you at complete random from random ass birds. I'd also say she's extremely map dependent too for her power, because if you get her on a flat map, she's 10 times as deadly as on a 2-story or shifting terrain map. Her design is awesome though, and it's one of my favorites in the game. Her cosmetics are also super cool, and I particularly like that newer Jabberwock one. That one looks sick. The Cannibal is also in this tier, but he only makes it here because of the recent changes that make it harder for basement or camping Bubba to work. His chases can be really fun and interactive, but all the years of getting downed and camped by Bubba make it hard for me to place him higher than this. He honestly just makes me pre-run from gens because of how hard it can be to get unhooked when he's the killer. Oh, and it super sucks to go against him in solo queue, especially if he's camping, because there's no way anyone can get quick enough to save you at all. Either that, or they don't realize he's camping at first and everyone will die trying to save you. It's also really fucking annoying when you guys are quitters and don't do your full hook states. If Bubba is camping you, the best thing you can do is take as long as possible on that hook. His design is kind of like, it fits him. He's licensed, so I'm trying not to judge them. The Singularity is kind of on this list due to one of the matches you guys might be seeing in this video. I don't understand how to play against him quite yet, since I stopped playing and only came back a bit after he came out. Because I haven't played much against him, I find him confusing and more difficult, especially with the way his teleport ability works. I wound up actually giving up in the match I played against him yesterday. I'm not very proud of it. It's also really fucking annoying when you guys are quitters and don't do your full hook states. It was because he was not only an unfamiliar killer, but he was on an unfamiliar map. It was really challenging and kind of frustrating, and I guess that's just due to not getting him much yet. He seems like he could be fun, but this is my tier list, so he gets to be here. His design is absolutely stellar though, and as a sci-fi nerd, I fucking love it. His voice lines are so dorky. He sounds like some AI named Steve that has like a button down on in his picture. Last one in this tier is the twins. They're fun to play against most of the time, and it's really fun to dodge Victor, but I don't see twins like ever in my matches. Victor's collision is completely off sometimes though, which isn't nice at all. And on the topic of Victor, it's nearly impossible to see him on maps with heavy vegetation, like the new Red Forest, or on the swamp. Kicking Victor is definitely the most fun thing to do against the twins. I will say, I'm not sure if she can still do this, but I think Charlotte can camp the exit gate and force you to use the other one, and then harass it with Victor. I'm not sure if that was patched or not. I don't know. Visually, the twins are exactly what I'd expect. Their design is pretty cool, I think. Next tier is kind of fun. These killers are mostly fun to play against, or are ones I've had a lot of fun playing against in the past, but they have their flaws. Starting us off is the Oni. The Oni is one that can be super fun, but can also suck, especially in solo queue. Coordination is super important in DBD in general, but more so against certain killers, and I feel like the Oni is one of those killers. He can be fun to do chase with, especially at the start where you're trying to not give him a hit at all. Once he does get that hit in though, he's pretty fun in chase still because his ability is fun to dodge and weave with. One thing I don't like is how his hitbox for his ability is kind of wonky, and allowing the ability to down more than one survivor can allow for a lot of camping problems. Probably fixed in the recent patch though, right? I don't know. I don't ever get camping Oni players much at all. Visually, I think he has one of the best designs in DBD, up there with Artist, especially with his cosmetics. Next in this tier, we have the Executioner. Pyramid Head is super fun to play against, but I've also had some bad experiences with him too. I see him relatively often, and I love trying to predict how he's going to use his power in chase. He doesn't feel super unfair or anything, and he can be a lot of fun. Getting basement hooked by him is an absolutely awful experience sometimes though, or how he can guard hooks. I've also had Pyramid Heads that would harass survivors trying to rescue caged survivors to the point where the caged survivor would teleport multiple times and die. Honestly, I think he's just sometimes a little boring, which is why he's in this tier. Visually, he looks really awesome, but he's also a license, so I can't judge him that much. Next, we have the Nurse. The Nurse is genuinely so fun to loop, especially when she's a mid or low tier nurse. Even higher tier nurses can be fun, but pretty difficult at the same time. Nurse is like a harder character because sometimes she just stomps in a match, but I'm gonna be honest, I'm not in the super high MMR brackets, especially not right now. I was definitely in higher MMR when I was consistently playing, but right now I'm just getting back into the game, so I'm not seeing nurses much at all. She doesn't usually stomp matches for me as a result when I do see her, and she can be pretty fun. I've had some OP nurses though, back before her power was nerfed, and it still counted as a basic attack. Knockout, Starstruck, Noed, etc. The ones that get it, get it. She belongs here in my opinion. Her design is pretty cool too and it suits her, but some of her cosmetics really do suck actual balls. Wraith is next, and as a former Wraith main, I'm not gonna lie, he's either super fun or really just not it. So Wraith can be fun in chase, and I love the aspect of stealth killers that just has me looking for them all the time. But where it's not fun is when he's spamming in and out of his power to get the speed boosts and whatnot, or when he has perks that just rely on passively slowing down gens for him. I find passive slowdown perks, especially used on killers like Wraith, can feel really unfair, especially because it just feels like the killer didn't earn that progress or earn that, you know? I've had one too many Wraiths that just go into their power and camp at the hook though, which kind of ruins the killer a bit more for me because it's always something I'm paranoid about when going for saves against him. Visually, I think his base design is okay, and that one chain cosmetic he has totally should have been his base design. He's got some cool skins outside of that though. Next, we have the Trapper. Trapper is mostly fun outside of, you know, the camping issues he has, and God forbid you get hooked in basement against a Trapper that knows what he's doing. Outside of that, he's super fun, and my issue with Trapper mainly lies in his eerie add-ons and how annoying it is when a random trap in a part of the map that he has not been to yet is open and it gets you. It's also annoying to get injured when disarming traps when you're the first person that it happens to. But I do find Trapper to be a lot of fun sometimes, and I like being a little menace that goes around disarming his traps wherever he goes. There's a lot of space for skill to be shown on both sides with Trapper, and I really like that about him. Visually, he's cool, and he's got some of my favorite skins in the game too. You guys that have that Krampus skin better run it this Christmas. Ending off the top of this tier is the Doctor. Doctor is one that I find to be super fun to loop, again because of that large space for skill to show on both sides. Where he falls flat is the damned if you do, damned if you don't thing, but I feel like it's not as prevalent with him as it is with other killers. My first and only 5-gen chase was against the Doctor on, I think, one of the Macmillan maps, and it was so much fun. I love trying to predict his ability and trying to juke him. His design is super gruesome and it's genuinely so cool. He has some cool cosmetics too, but he also has some of the worst. So I don't know. I just genuinely really like playing against him. So I actually lied. The last killer in this tier is going to be Chucky, and Chucky wasn't initially going to be in this video, but I played against him a lot today. And I actually had a lot of fun. I have some concerns for Chucky and his balance and the state that he's in right now. I think he's a lot of fun to loop, but I feel like his ability is near impossible to dodge, and I think that's kind of an issue. I think that mostly comes from his hitbox feeling a little janky, or also just me not being used to looping him yet as a survivor. I expected to have a lot more issues with his scamper ability, but it honestly wasn't that hard to deal with. You really just keep going. You just have to notice in time that he's doing that so that you don't get caught by it. And then he's just super unique. He's a really unique killer. I will say he's really hard to see in certain circumstances, but that's just because he's so small, and a lot of that just comes with time and like learning how to play against him, because I didn't play on the PTB, so I'm not used to him yet. Also, I will say it feels like there's a meta going on with Chucky right now and his perks, because every game that my friends and I played, we had the same set of perks. A lot of it was based on the obsession, so we would have Play With Your Food, Rancor, that Chucky perk that came out that makes it so the obsession gets exposed. Nemesis was not Nemesis the killer, like Nemesis the Oni perk. So I don't know what was going on with that. That was not very fun. I saw more Deerstalker than I've ever seen in DBD though, which was definitely odd, but I'm guessing that's because of the Nicolas Cage perk. What's it called? Plot Twist? He was super fun, and I think playing against him without a Swift would definitely be a struggle. I was playing in a 4-man today, so I really don't think that I would be really good against him in solo queue, because having other people that can call out where he is, especially when he's in hidey-ho mode or when you're not exactly sure what's going on, is way helpful. I feel like Chucky is going to be a nightmare for solo queue players, especially when I have to play by myself in the coming days, so that's gonna suck. But yeah, he goes here. And the last tier is the killers I find that are most fun to play against. These killers are super interactive, have a lot of room for skill to show on both sides, and are just ones I find to be a lot of fun. Bottom of this tier is the Mastermind. Wesker is like super fun and one of my favorite killers to go against. My only issues with him are how weird his hitbox feels sometimes, and how often I see him. He's a lot of fun, but sometimes I don't want to play against Wesker for 5 matches in a row. Seriously, as writing this tier list, I was talking to a friend of mine and playing a match of DBD, and I got Wesker match after match. Though, nothing feels better than tricking a Wesker into vaulting a window or getting him mid-dash with a pallet, and he's loads of fun for the most part. Getting tunneled by him is definitely not it though, and with high mobility killers that can just zoom and be across the map, it's pretty hard to counter, but he's fun nonetheless. Next is the Xenomorph. Ironically, I've played against the Xenomorph more than the Singularity, and I think that's pretty funny, but he's a lot of fun. I did have to learn the scope of his tail though, because I was kind of treating it like a Nemesis tentacle, and it is not a Nemesis tentacle, it's a lot harder to dodge over pallets and things. It's like a Nemesis tentacle if the Nemesis tentacle took some weird mysterious growth pills off of a special website. Yeah, he's fun, and getting to light the killer on fire is also super fun. And he has that one cosmetic that my friends are simping over. You guys know what I'm talking about. Next is the Blight. So Blight is one I find super fun to go against, but he can also be super difficult to go against. Unlike Nurse, the skill ceiling for Blight is really high, so when I come across a good Blight, it doesn't usually feel that bad losing to him. He's fun and interactive, but he can also be a little too oppressive due to his mobility, which can really suck. What sucks more though is that my team tends to just give up the moment they see a Blight. I swear it's like a semi-truck barreling toward a deer that's just standing there. My matches against Blight would be a lot more fun if people didn't just give up against him. And don't even give me the excuse of, oh, it's Blight after Blight after Blight for me, because I go through the same shit with Wesker and I still at least try. I had a Meg in one of my matches that I recorded for this video that legit sat AFK for parts of the match instead of helping us. Oh, and before I forget, visually Blight is one of my favorite killers. He looks awesome and he has a lot of cosmetics, namely Ferryman and that Seething Ice one. Those ones are so cool. I also like that purple one they released. Next is the Ghostface. I don't have much to say about him. He's fun, and Ghostface players are either super fun and goofy or really shitty campers and tunnelers. There's not really an in-between. Being able to teabag each other is pretty silly, but it definitely sucks to be the first one marked in the trial, especially if that's how you find out that it's Ghostface. He's fun to loop and a little hard to predict sometimes, and his design is simple and cool. He's a classic. The Hillbilly is one that I think deserves to be in one of the highest spots because he's fun to play against, but Jesus Christ, he's a nightmare to play. I've tried playing Billy recently because I'm trying to get all achievements in this game, and I cannot get Adept Billy to save my life. I got Adept Trapper on my first try, but oh my lord. Billy's chainsaw is fun to see in general, and it's super satisfying to juke it. The skill ceiling for Billy is super high, so it's almost always fun to play against him, and it always feels different. Billy players are either babies and new to him, memeing, or super deadly, and there's not really an in-between. Visually, he's spot on for what I would expect him to look like. Next is the Spirit. Spirit is a lot of fun, and I find her chases to be really interactive. I also love predicting her, especially as a Spirit main myself. I don't play killer often, but when I do, she's my go-to. Having the audio be so important is unique to mainly her, and I really like that aspect. Predicting which side of the palette she's going to be on can be unnerving, but it's so satisfying when you do it right. There's not as big of a skill ceiling for Spirit, but survivors definitely get a lot of room to express their experience against her, and I feel that way about Nurse too. Although sometimes Nurse can be too oppressive, but her design is hands down my favorite in the game, but not like her base design, but her aquatic one specifically. She also has some awesome ones like the crystal/snow one and the blighted one. Up next is the first killer I ever played, Huntress. She's so fun to play against, and I love dodging her hatchets. I wish Trickster was a little more like Huntress, because if he wasn't so spammy, he'd be a lot of fun. Huntress is one of my favorite killers to go against, and am I the only one that gets her lullaby like stuck in my head after a match with her? Oh, and her design is literally one of my favorites. Her cosmetics are, mostly, stellar, and the only bad thing I can think of about Huntress is how easy it is to camp with her Eerie Hatchet. Eerie Hatchet plus insta-down perks make for a really unfun match, but I find it's pretty rare to come across. Not to mention how high the skill ceiling can be for Huntress, and how much skill gets to be shown off on both sides. The Deathslinger is genuinely so fun to play against too. Dodging his gun is a lot of fun, and it's also really satisfying. I love looping this killer, and there's a lot of room for skill on both sides again, which is something I really like. He's been one of my favorite killers since I started playing DBD, and I mean, Mr. Shooterman has some of the most interactive chases I've ever had. My one complaint about Deathslinger is that he can shoot a survivor straight off the hook and wait out the endurance, which doesn't really feel nice. One thing I can remember about Deathslinger is one time Deathslinger was slugging most of my team, and one survivor popped the last generator, and we got out because I had adrenaline. Design-wise, I think he looks really cool and really unique. I really like it. Nemesis is one of my favorite killers to play against. Dodging the tentacle attack is so much fun, and there's so much that goes into a chase with him. It's really funny how you can fake a pallet, and 99% of the time, the Nemi player will either pull up the tentacle or try to swing through the pallet. I do have a funny story though. One time I was playing with a friend of mine back before Borrowed Time was base kit, and my friend was hooked down in the basement under Shack. This was on the swamp map, and the gate was right behind Shack. I saved him and got downed and hooked, and I was telling him to just go and get out, but he saved me and we juked the hell out of the Nemi we were up against. He'd been face camping down in the basement. And the funny thing is, in the end screen, he threatened to dox us. Another funny thing here in some Cosmo lore, I'm a cybersecurity major in college, so just imagine how that would pan out. The last killer, and the top of this tier list, is the Demogorgon. He's the most fun and interactive killer in the game, and matches with him can go Either way, his shred attack is fun to dodge and weave with, and it's also super cool to see at the same time. The animation is literally awesome. His portal ability is also cool, but it's something you gotta watch out for as a survivor in case he pre-drops the exit gates or nearby the exit gates. Demo is one that I love to see, and I'm super happy the Stranger Things DLC was brought back. I had the Demogorgon and Nancy and Steve all through a license key, which thankfully at the time I got it was only a few dollars and not in the hundreds like they were recently. His design is awesome and his cosmetics are all amazing too. Demos are my favorites. And that's it for the video. Remember to like and subscribe and tell me your opinions in the comments. Which killers are the most fun to you? What killer do you hate the most? Do you agree with me that Trickster is literally the worst fucking killer in this game? I don't know, tell me below. You can also find me on some other socials linked down below if you're looking for more content of mine, and if you're looking for more DBD content, you can head over to my Twitch. I struggle to keep a consistent stream schedule, but I am trying to be better about it, and I stream basically anything over there, whereas YouTube is mainly just Minecraft. While you're at it, YouTube thinks you're gonna like this video, so maybe you want to give it a try? I don't know, if you get an idea. Here, I'll let you think about it.